Hello, everyone, and welcome to the pixeLobby radio blog. This is your host, Brian Mundy, and I want to welcome you to our very first show. And today we have our crew, our pixeLobby crew. We have Cindy Walkerson.
Hey.
Hello, Cindy. Hey, Cindy. We're all on Google Hangouts. Micah Burke.
Good evening.
And we got Ed Ward.
Hey, everybody.
And Jesus Rodriguez.
Ramirez.
I'm reading my paper here. Okay, great. Wonderful. Well, I want to welcome all of you to our very first show. This has been a while in planning. We've been trying to get to this for quite a while. And what a distinguished panel of experts. And I'd like to ask around, like, Cindy, could you tell us just a little bit about your background for those who may be listening to the show that don't know you?
Well, I've been doing photography my whole life and interested in it, but professionally I've been doing it since 2006. It was more journalism that intrigued me, and then it's just developed and grown into something even more spectacular. But even more than that, I'm really intrigued with all of my many friends and the talent that's there. So that's what's brought us here today, was all the many different people.
All right, fantastic. Micah, why don't you give us a little bit of background about you?
I'm a creative director for a sleep products retailer in Northern California. I've been working with Adobe software since 1989, since I was a knee-high to a grasshopper. I'm a freelance web developer, landscape photographer, photo composite creator. I'm also an alcoholic beverage taste tester.
I thought it almost stopped at alcoholic.
Well,
beverage taste.
Hi, I'm Micah, and
Ed, hey, tell us, buddy. You're here in Southern California, down by me. Tell our audience a little bit about you.
Yeah, okay, well, I moved out here from New Jersey in '85, specifically to get a gig doing graphic design, and I did that in art direction for till '98 when I decided it was time to go off on my own. So I've been freelancing since then, and it has offered me the opportunity to surf a little more, which is great. I've recently gotten into photography, and I've been enjoying that quite a bit, but I must admit that I'm not as prolific as I'd like to be and as everyone else on this panel seems to be, but hopefully that will change soon.
No problem. We need all kinds of perspective on that. And lastly, well, not lastly, I'll take it last. Jesus, tell us about you.
I've been using Adobe products for roughly 10 or so years, and professionally I've been a graphic designer for about 9 years, and I'm also a programmer, and most recently I've been teaching people how to use Photoshop on my website, photoshoptrainingchannel.com.
Absolutely. Feel free to pimp your shows or your websites or anything at any time. And we'll also have all that in the show notes. I myself, Brian Mundy, I've been, maybe I'm the old dog here, I've been in the industry for about 38 years, started out in a commercial photo lab doing all the wet process, everything from developing black and white film, black and white printing, color printing, to probably in the early 90s decided, this whole industry is taking this digital direction and moving that way. So I went to UCI for computer graphics, graduated from there, and when I did, the owner of the company I worked for, Photomation, said, do you want to start up and run the digital side of the company? And that's what I did. I took over. So, eventually everything ended up digital. So I ended up basically running the whole company. In 2006, I was president of a trade association in the photography industry called DIMA, Digital Imaging Marketing Association. And I started a podcast back in the early days. I mean, podcasting had been out maybe 6 months, and we started a thing called the DIMAcast. And I did that for 8.5 years, almost 400 shows. And that's what's kind of got me wrangled into this gig right here. So once again, we got a great show. Today we're going to talk about, and our topic is about digital workflow. And this digital workflow is going to be more about after you've taken a photograph and you have that card in your hand and you're getting that into your computer, and how do you do that? And we're going to ask our experts here about their particular different ways that they do it. Get it into the computer. What softwares do they use? And if they're going to do any production or any kind of manipulation, do they just stay in one particular software product? Do they move into others? So we'd like to listen to that. So if you don't mind, we'll mix it up a little bit. Why don't we start, Micah? Why don't you tell us how you do your digital processing?
Yeah, sure thing. Currently, I'm shooting with mostly with a Sony Alpha 5100 camera. That's my my go-to camera right now because it's a small APS-C sensor, but it's very easy and portable to move around. I really appreciate having the portability of that camera. I also have a D7000, which is somewhere back here in the background, and it's a lot larger and provides about the same image quality. So I tend to take the 5100 with me mostly. What I usually end up doing is I shoot a lot of photos and I bring them home, stick them into the computer, and I've got a workflow process that I've actually posted on pixeLobby, and it's going to be in the show notes if anybody wants to take a look at that. And it's one of the things I always find interesting with folks who are using Lightroom is that they seem to have varied workflows. But for me, the workflow is you import into Lightroom and allow Lightroom to do all the organization for you. There's no sense in copying the files off of the card onto your hard drive and then uploading one at a time and messing with them. Instead, you allow Lightroom to do all the organization, and that way it's Lightroom always knows where the files are, and they're always in the same order. And if you move anything, you use Lightroom. But from there, I may tweak the photos a little bit. I'll definitely throw some, the camera. Do some fixes for the camera lens. It's that sort of thing. And then I usually will be shooting bracketed photos, which means I'll end up taking the bracketed photos into Photoshop and then hand blending them. I have tried the Lightroom Hdr blend, and it's pretty good, but I generally find that the Lightroom blend is not exactly what I'm after, and I like to hand blend them in Photoshop. And I generally shoot HDR on everything. And I know some people out there in the universe are groaning, but I just find that hand blending HDR tends to bring quality that I'm looking for in the photos. So from there, I go back into Lightroom. I usually will end up in Nik Effects Color Effects 4. I really find that it pops the images. Everybody's looking for that pop. Nik Color Effects 4 really does that for me. And then from there, I might sharpen the image a little bit more, perhaps in Topaz. And then export it out. That's my workflow.
That sounds. It sounds to me like that is discussed a lot. And I did read your post on Lightroom in the pixeLobby on the workflow, and I thought it was excellent. There's some things I need to learn and do from that. Cindy, why don't you give us your typical at the end of a day of a shoot, how you work with your images?
Well,
and you dry off.
After I dry out. Well, I usually give myself a good day or two before I actually start editing because my shoots are pretty long. But once I get it in the computer, I upload it directly into Lightroom. And when I upload it into Lightroom, I also have it make a copy onto my hard drive. So it's in both spots. It's not... and then once I'm in there, I do some quick tweaking. I used to use the crop tool in Lightroom all the time because I loved it. But since CS6 came out and they upgraded their crop tool, I am absolutely in love with Photoshop's crop tool there. So basically I open it, go through Lightroom, I do just a little bit of tweaking with the color, kind of make sure all the images exposure-wise and color-wise look well. And then I've recently discovered that I really do enjoy the lens correction in Lightroom, and so that can be kind of fun, especially when you're shooting at an angle where you're looking up at the stairs at a group of people and everything just seems like it needs to pull forward or pull back. The perspective needs to change. I really like that feature there. But really, when I want to put an artistic flair or touch to any images, I I always take it into Photoshop. I really love what you can do in Photoshop. You have the layers where you can tweak things. You have the masking, and it just gives you a lot more control. So I take it into Photoshop almost always and do my own play and put my own little touch on things. And I ended off in there. I do use some third-party products, and it depends on what I'm trying to do. I just did a shoot not long ago on my children, and it was a Halloween one, and I found that the Nik third-party software had that HDR effect that I could tweak it a little bit, and it really added something special to the images. But I don't just stick with one company or whatever. I love Alien Skin. I love Nik. I love Noiseware is wonderful for those who haven't used Noiseware. It's really nice for cleaning up the skin, making it a little bit more smooth if you need. You know, it just depends on what I'm looking for in that particular shoot. I'm really a custom shooter, but I do also believe in being consistent in how I process my images. So if I do a session, I make sure that I write everything down, I create an action for it, and make sure the flow follows a certain pattern for that particular shoot so that it has a nice flow and goes well in an album. Then I export it, and that's where I go.
And you go out to print more often. Your clients are buying, well, your clients are buying images from you, right?
Yeah, they buy from me, but I don't print them here at my own house. I purchase the products through different professional labs, but I'm very particular. If they do not produce a good quality product, I'm not going to be buying their product for my clients because they deserve the best.
I think there's a whole show that we could do in the future that's just on that whole printing and prepping for print and how we do that. I think that would be a great show. Ed, tell us a little bit. I'm sorry, Cindy.
Oh, no, that's fine. You're good.
Ed. Ed, tell us a little bit about your workflow and how you process, develop. I like to think of it as still developing the image after the fact.
Yeah, I have a D7000 like Micah, but it's my only camera, so I don't have anything else to go to. I gotta lug that thing around. I'm really comfortable in Photoshop. I've worked with it for so long as a designer and done a lot of compositing that when I got the camera, I also bought Lightroom 4, but I'm a fairly well-organized person, and I delved into it slightly and thought, I don't need this for the organizational part. And as far as the developmental side, I can use Photoshop, and Camera Raw was becoming quite popular at that time, so I just delved into Camera Raw. And I usually develop all my pictures that way. And then if they need further exploration, which I like to tinker, so I always find they do, I'll just take them into Photoshop after doing most of my adjustments in Camera Raw. That's my basic workflow.
And that seems to be we're starting to form a consensus here, which is nice, actually.
Well, I'm not sure. There's a lot of people that are using Lightroom, and I feel like, especially now that I have this new shiny computer, I do need to catalog. Now that I'm getting more and more photographs, and they're all shot in RAW, it's not quite as easy to organize them as a bunch of JPEGs.
Right.
So you need to delve into that further.
Can I say something?
Yes.
I was just saying, what's really cool is I used to be primarily Photoshop, and then I moved and got the Lightroom, and what's really exciting about Lightroom was that I found I could look at more images, I can sync all those images together. It really made my whole workflow a lot nicer, and I guess it works kind of like Bridge, but you can edit it without having to export and stuff. So it really gave me control on my images, and I didn't have to bring in one at a time, and it made things a lot faster. So that was exciting. But if I had to choose just one program and I couldn't have Lightroom, I would go with Photoshop in a heartbeat.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah.
So, Jesus, what do you have to add to this? I mean, you're spending a lot of time in your tutorials teaching some of this wonderful stuff. Is there any magic trick that you have that we could all be like, ooh, ready to race to the computer and give that a try?
I don't know, man. I'll tell you, and then you tell me.
All right.
Well, as far as workflows, I mean, you mentioned my tutorials, and that's just a part of the thing. One of the things that I do. I also do my own professional work, so I'll kind of talk about both a little bit. As I mentioned earlier, professionally, I'm a graphic designer, so I usually don't shoot my own photos. They're mostly stock pictures or graphics that I create and things like that. So I don't use Lightroom all that much professionally. I use it a lot personally for my own personal photos, but professionally I mostly stick with Camera Raw, go through Adobe Bridge, find my pictures, make any adjustments that I may need to with Camera Raw, and then use those photos on my composition, my design, whatever it is. But before I do any of that, I like to sketch things out. So I may have a piece of paper. I always have a piece of paper and a pen because I'll sketch out whatever I want to do. Really, it's it's just basic stick figures, nothing fancy. And once I have an idea of what I want to do, I will either find the pictures like through iStock or something like that. Very rarely will I take the picture myself, simply because it's too much work to go and take the right picture that I want, unless it's something that I know it's nearby or I could get, or maybe a picture that I've already had from the past. But yeah. So for example, today I was working on a couple advertisement pieces to be used as Facebook ads, and they're very specific as to what Facebook requires in terms of specs. So I started out with a sketch. I found the pictures that I wanted and just created several different pieces for my client. You were also talking about the tutorials. The tutorials are completely different. Essentially, what the tutorials are is, if I learn something, I'll usually do a tutorial out of it because I get to understand it better. Once usually I like to make my tutorials long and explain them as best as I can. So I do a lot of research. So that really helps me grasp the concepts that I learn. So it's a completely different workflow. I would say for any tutorial that I do, I probably spend at least 5 hours on Word typing something and researching it, and then I'll record it. So it's completely different.
Well, they do say, isn't it, there's no better way to learn something than to have to teach it?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's totally true.
The last tutorial that I did, it's color matching using the LAB color mode, and that's something I learned from an Adobe community professional, Carlos Garro, who's from Costa Rica. Actually got a chance to meet him in person. But Carlos and I had done several online presentations, and I saw him do that. And right after the presentation, I was on Facebook chat just telling him, like, how did you do that? Like, I didn't really get this part, like just trying to learn it from him. And once I got the concept that he showed, I asked him if I could make a tutorial out of it, and I just spent like 4 hours researching it and made a tutorial.
That was a terrific tutorial, by the way.
Thank you.
Lee Veris of Veris Photo Media. Again, we're talking back 96 or so. I guess I'm going to be, as Cindy said, the historian here. Back in the good old days in 96, Lee was teaching and talking about lab color and color back then. So you check him out. He's done an awful lot of that kind of work in lab. Matter of fact, we used to use lab as our hot tip and trick for sharpening images.
Oh, nice.
We would go into the luminance, the L channel, and do all the sharpening there, because you could push on it so much harder and not see any artifacting.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I only use lab colors for sometimes when you're creating a selection or a mask, you go into the alpha channels, and obviously with RGB you just have those three. But then you have, if you switch the color mode, then you have the CMYKs, and then you have the LEB. So you might find a channel with more contrast that you can easier make a selection from. So that's pretty much the only reason I ever went into the lab channels. But yeah.
Yeah. And mine, quite frankly, is similar to most of us. First of all, I want to say that not everybody who have part of the pixeLobby radio blog is necessarily photographers. we're graphic artists, graphic designers, so
Right.
we want to bring some different perspectives. So, you know, where somebody's saying, well, I just use it for my personal work, it's, yeah, but he's got a tremendous amount of Photoshop and design background as well. For me, again, I'm shooting, I have a Canon 5D Mark III. You know, what's kind of important for me to mention is I have this workflow that goes on with my cards. I have 10 8-gigabyte cards, and I number them 1 through 10, and I use them in that sequence. So when I download and I put my files on the computer, I don't immediately erase that card. That card goes back into its holder, you know, and then I move on to card 2 or card 3 or card 4. So it may be a couple of weeks, a month, before I ever cycle around to reformatting that first card. That way, if, you know, we've all been there on Facebook when people have gone, oh no, I've erased my card and I've lost my images and they're corrupt. What do I do? And this is just another safeguard. And I've learned this, like most people, through catastrophes. But, you know, when I put in a card, unlike Micah, but I want to explore Micah's, the way he does it, is I don't use Lightroom to import in my images immediately. I have a folder, which is my photos folder, and I'll create a new folder within Photos, labeled usually with the date and, for instance, whether it was in Costa Rica, whether I was in Eastern Sierras, whatever the shoot was, and I copy all those images off the card into that folder. Now that folder I then drag into Lightroom, and Lightroom imports it. Now I can also, through Lightroom, I can do, synchronize folders?
Mm-hmm.
And it will go and it will update because it knows where everything is. But I also have that particular folder backed up in 3 different places. It's backed up on other removable drives automatically. It's backed up to the cloud automatically. So I'm constantly aware of making it. I have this philosophy, and well, it's not mine. I've learned it from somebody. If it doesn't exist in 3 places, it doesn't exist. You know, and nothing is more catastrophic than you losing, heaven forbid, a job, but also those precious moments in your life.
Yep.
You know, when those are gone, it's just a catastrophe. And I use Lightroom to do kind of my global corrections, sorting. I basically go from the top of the tools palette and work in the develop module and work my way down through that stack of tools and just do some global corrections. If I need to do any heavy lifting or some intense work, I'll immediately, right from then, edit in Photoshop. And I think one of the things Micah didn't point out is the beauty and the seamlessness of going from Lightroom, boom, into Photoshop, doing some edits there, saving, and that copy being saved right back into Lightroom. Right. And back into that folder that's being backed up in many places. So, I mean, that's my typical, I'm doing a lot of compositing these days, so it's quite obvious that Lightroom is not a compositing tool, but that stuff needs to be done in Photoshop. I find myself, these years I've been doing this, I have a very production mentality. When I worked at Photomation, you know, we would have hundreds of jobs due every day. Now, that may have been in the shop for 2 or 3 days, but, I mean, it was an intense schedule. So you had to learn how to do things like, okay, I have 1,000 photographs for Nissan, and I need to go through, and we call dust bust and color correct all 1,000 images. How do you fly through those? And, you know, we would have teams of people who would say, okay, you take one end of the folder, I'll take the other end of the folder, and we'll meet in the middle. And you just start flying through. But,
you know, I find it interesting because, and I kind of jokingly, in my posts, when I'm reposting my post in other social medias, I basically say, you're using Lightroom wrong. And it's basically just to get people, you know, engaged with it. And I don't really necessarily think there is a right or wrong way, but I got to tell you, I'm a lazy guy. And the last thing I want to do is create a folder, throw images in it, dig through them, figure out which ones I want, cull through them, and then import. And that's fine. A lot of people are doing that, and I think that's fine. I know Matt Kowalski, he goes and uses, I think he's using On1 or one of the other photo editors to look at them before he imports them into Lightroom. And that's cool, too. He does his culling before he even imports. I want it done quick, so what happens is I'll do the import, and it gets in there. I might rename the folder, or I might actually have it, type in some information about it while it's importing, and then I use automated software to back it up to a RAID that also goes up to the cloud. So I've got that 3 copies.
Yep.
Because, like you, and that's one thing. That's the other thing I do want to mention is I've noticed a lot of folks. Are immediately pulling their files from off their camera cards onto external hard drives, and they're not having any other backups other than this external drive. And I got to tell you, that's the worst thing possible, because these external drives will fail. It's only a matter of time.
Yes.
When they fail, you're going to lose everything.
I have a question. So for the Lightroom users that move into Photoshop, now, when I'm doing it, after I've done a session, I turn around and I remove it from Lightroom. Do you just leave it in your catalogs? Because for myself, it's kind of my organization flow. I go through, do my entire session, and then I remove that entire session from Lightroom because I no longer need it, and I have it saved already on a hard drive. I have drives mirrored and all that fun stuff. But I don't see the need to keep it in Lightroom and bog it down with tons of different files. And so I'm just curious how you guys handle that.
Anybody?
Micah?
Yeah, there's a couple of different ways. The one way I saw him, I think it was Matt Kowalski doing it, is he would create a new catalog for each client. So if he was doing a wedding for the Smith wedding, he would create a new catalog for that client, import the files into that catalog, do the editing in that catalog, and then close it and open it. So he's got his own personal catalog where his own personal files, his kitty cats or whatever it is, his family is in there. But then he's got each client in a separate catalog, and I think that'd be a very useful technique if you're shooting, photos for a client, rather than pulling them into the database, the Lightroom database, and then removing them from the database. And that's an important distinction people need to realize about Lightroom. When you import a photo into Lightroom, you're not importing it. You're not necessarily importing it into a new location. You're actually telling Lightroom basically where it is. Lightroom doesn't actually pull the photo in. It doesn't actually make any actual changes to the photo itself. It simply is telling the computer what changes to make to this image once it's exported. Lightroom's a database-driven application versus an actual photo editor. A lot of people don't quite understand that about Lightroom, and so I think that's probably the primary thing that people need to realize about that. But as far as getting back to what you're asking, I personally wouldn't remove them. Then again, I'm a pack rat, so I keep every last image that I've ever made, and I look at that and I go, oh, that's a completely blurry image. I might use that sometime. Most folks probably don't. That said, I've got 50,000 plus images. I took an entire day last month to go through them, and I only freed up 3 gigs. So, so you might have something there. At the same time, I might want to go back and use that image. So I would suggest for your workflow, if it's a client, create a new catalog, import them. That way, if you ever need to go back and change that import or re-edit those files, you've got them.
Oh, and I do, and I keep all of my files. I just find it easier that if I want to go in and re-edit, then I just upload that entire session again on its own. It just helps it so I don't have to sort through all of the files and all of the catalogs. It's just my little system. I just find it intriguing that people have different catalogs when for me it's easier just to go through my folders and re-import it if I really want to deal with that. But that's it. Thanks for answering it. That was really good answer.
Well, good. Does anyone else have anything good to go for this topic? Ed?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm just trying to take in all the Lightroom information and figure out where to go with it when I finally jump the gun.
That's good.
My best recommendation is baby steps, just like with Photoshop. I mean, a lot of people will pick up Lightroom, and a lot of times they let it overwhelm them, and they get frustrated because they want to know it all at once. With Lightroom, you just start with one thing, you master it, you move on to the next thing, and you move on to the next thing. Well, Lightroom, I find that it's a really easy program once you understand what you're looking at and what you're doing. But don't expect to take it all at once. You take it baby steps. Learn how to change the white balance. Learn how to do the exposure. Learn how to deal with the shadows. Then you can move on to the coloring, the separate selective coloring, and then so forth and so forth. And pretty soon you'll be like, oh man, how did I think this was hard, because it's one of the easiest programs I've had to deal with, and so, a lot of people expect to jump in and know it all, and there's tons of tutorials and videos, and they overwhelm themselves. Take it one thing at a time, just like with shooting. Learn how to focus, then move forward. It is just baby steps.
Yeah, I think that there are a great amount of similarities between the development module and Lightroom and Adobe Camera Raw. So I don't anticipate. I'm sorry.
It's the same engine, yeah.
Yeah, I don't anticipate a huge learning curve there. It's just wrapping my head around the organizational part of it, which is really what I'm looking forward to getting into now that I'm getting more and more images.
Right. Well, yeah, good, and that's a very good point, Cindy, and I hope, again, that none of us here, when that kind of insane question is always asked, and it's a no-win kind of confrontatory question about what is better, Lightroom or Photoshop.
Photoshop.
Photoshop. Photoshop.
For what?
You guys are killing my point.
Well, then you go into Illustrator and you go into, I guess it's, do you want vector? Do you want non-vectored? There's so many different options that you have there. Photoshop is not the only one. And unless you want to just edit with that. But why limit yourself to one thing? And I hear people that tell me all the time, well, I don't want to use third-party presets. Well, they're tools just like what you have in Photoshop.
You make your own too, so yeah.
And it's learning how to use it. If you don't know how to use it right, it's going to look horrible. And if you know how to work it right, a lot of people hate HDR, and Micah just talked about that. HDR is not bad if it's done correctly. It's amazing. And, there's a lot of other things that are just simply amazing, like Jesus just did 3D models and stuff like that I personally don't work on the 3D models, but dang, they are nice and they're exciting. And you know what? It has something to do, it's not just photography, it's art. And a lot of people need to get their minds wrapped around what art really is.
Yeah.
People get upset because when you're doing photography that you're not being true to the art. If you don't just do a one click and that's the most amazing picture, you're not being a true photographer. No, that's malarkey. It's about being an artist, and each individual has a vision.
Language.
Amen, sister. Testify.
So, anyway, I go on my little rampage there, but it's about the art, and that's partly what pixeLobby is about. It's about the artists, the digital artists, the designers, the graphic designers, and we've got Ed here who came on there, and we were talking about pixeLobby, and he puts on some musical video, or not music, MP3, and it's digital too. And it's an art, and he was like, I hope this is okay, and I'm like, are you kidding me? It's digital. Go for it. You're an artist, and I'm good with that. So anyway, it is about the art and each individual's perception. My little rant. There you go.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, amen. Yeah. No, that's good, Cindy. Okay, there's go ahead.
Oh, no, I just gave her a 10.
Okay. So we're going to try this out for a little while here. We got this, and this is an original idea. There's people out there at This Week in Photography that do this kind of pick of the week. Now, we don't say week because we haven't quite narrowed down how frequently we're going to be doing this show. We're starting off walking before we start running. So we're hoping right now to put a first show out and then maybe our next show within the month. And we'll see where it progresses. And we won't always have a panel of 5 people here. Sometimes we'll have fewer than that, just who can make it. But one of the things we want to try out is a pick of the show. And this is about what is there something you've discovered recently that is just this hot little topic, and whether it's a software, hardware, whether it's camera gear, whether it's computer gear, whether it's a cloud service or a website. So I've put everybody on alert, and they've had to come up with a pick. But I'm going to toss mine out there first. First of all, I've been working on this project where I'm doing a lot of compositing, using a lot of blend modes, creating these black and white composites. And recently, I've discovered a few softwares to put on my iPad. Now, not that I create some of my serious work on the iPad, but it's a great brain release. It's a great playtime. As Cindy knows, and Micah, I mean, I spend a lot of time in the evening out in the jacuzzi having my cigar, and I'm playing with, Lightroom, and I'm playing with these apps, and I'm creating these different things. So what I have here are 2 applications. One is called Circular Plus, and the other one is called Reflect, and they're by a company called Brain Fever Media.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Micah likes it. And Circular is that, have you ever seen those shots that basically they've taken a cityscape or a parkscape or...
They're called polar panoramas. Polar
panoramas. There you go. I didn't even know what they called it. I just called it cool. And the other one with Reflect does kind of mirroring. And there's a lot of composites that start out with people taking, whether it's abstract stuff on the beach, stones, rocks, Joshua Tree, and they start off by mirroring because it creates this symmetry of something for you to start to build and tell a story with. So those are my picks. I would check those out. Obviously, they're on the App Store. I believe they're available on Android as well as iPad. But I don't own games. I don't play video games. I never have. Playing with images and doing this is my video games. All right, let's go. You've always been last, so let's go with you, Jesus.
Yeah, so I got 2 apps, and as I mentioned earlier, I like to sketch a lot. That's how I get a lot of ideas. So I use it's not necessarily a new app or anything, it's just the one that I use and that I like. It's called Sketchbook by Autodesk, and it's one of my favorites. So I don't have that on my iPad or tablet or anything like that. It's just on my cell phone. Simply because if I'm not home and I just get an idea for something, I can quickly sketch it out and then save it for later. Another app that I discovered just yesterday is called Inspire by Adobe, and it's just a bunch of design articles. It's essentially a magazine, but they have a little app for it. And the article that I was just reading was, I don't know if you guys saw the 25th year anniversary. It was a YouTube video, then they made it into a commercial with the song Dream On. But anyway, so they were talking about how it was created, the artists behind them, and stuff like that. So I've been using it for one day, and I've read like 5 articles already. So yeah, those are
excellent. Those are great choices. Now I have a question for you. I've been doing graphic arts. I've been designing since I was in high school.
Yeah. Page
layout, the newspaper, and the yearbook in high school.
Right.
I can't sketch or draw anything to save my life. If I make stick people. Now, I can draw, I do surprise people, I can draw things like tables and chairs in perspective.
Yeah.
But I can't draw people. Do you have, were you kind of trained and schooled in art?
Not in school, but on my own. I mean, the reason I started using Photoshop to begin with was to color my drawings and, take them to the next level. Growing up, I used to read a lot of comic books. I was a big, Spider-Man fan, X-Men fan, all the Marvel superheroes, and I used to draw them all the time. And right around the time I was 18 or 19, my buddy had his brother had I think it was Photoshop 5 or 6, and he was showing it to me, and I was just there drawing with the mouse, and I went and by this time I was in college. I was, I think, 19, and then they had a computer lab, so I started using Photoshop there, and that's how I got into it. I think it was version 7 by that time when I really started getting into it. But the point is that I got into it just to ink my drawings and color them and stuff like that. And then I became a graphic designer, and I sort of started drawing. And I'm actually starting to get back into it now, but yeah, I was never really properly trained. I did take some classes, when you're a graphic design major, you do have to take some drawing classes, but I wouldn't call myself trained. It's just practicing, reading books, watching videos.
Excellent. I'm always impressed by anybody who has that talent. Just impresses me.
Well, I mean, talent it's an overrated word. It's not like God-given or anything. It's just you got to put in the time like anything else, And
that's true. That's something I've learned recently. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
I mean, if you look at somebody who's talented, they probably spent hundreds of hours, if not thousands of hours, just practicing that one thing over and over and over again until it seems like talent. But it's just a bunch of practice.
And just kind of FYI, my first version of Photoshop, 1.27.
Nice.
Got me beat.
Yeah, it came like on 23 5-inch floppies, and I don't think it did color. It was obviously no layers, no no layers, no one undo.
Yeah, and they
amazing.
just had a video of that recently that was circulating. If you haven't seen it, it's a video on some of the more well-known artists out there using Photoshop 1.0 and all those, and that was quite the fun experience to watch.
That's funny. So it's like, no way am I doing that subscription. I will not give it to the man. Ed, tell us your picks, buddy.
Okay, before I do that, I'll go into what you were just talking about with Jesus. I did go to art school, and I thought I was going to be a painter. I was kind of a standout artist in high school, but when I got to college and art school, I realized I was not quite that good. And I remember, I think it was my sophomore year, they were kind of discouraging me from carrying on and painting, which I did anyway. Maybe you should look into graphics. You're much more thumb, finger, and eyeball. I never forgot that expression. So I took graphics, and I remember I was asked to design a Tchaikovsky album cover or something, and I took a rose and put it right in the middle of the cover, and he says, "This looks like a doorknob. Next." I'm like, oh, I guess I shouldn't be a graphic designer either. So, but it worked out in the end. Anyway, as far as my picks, Cindy had mentioned alien skin before, and she was probably referring to exposure. I've never tried that, but on the graphic end, I've owned a bunch of alien skin products.
Mm-hmm.
And eye candy, I just love.
Mm-hmm.
It's terrific for making quick down and dirty logos, chrome reflection, glass, brushed metal, reptile skin, whatever you want. And it's relatively inexpensive. I find it very versatile, and for a client that needs something that's, well, cheap, you can do it very quickly. The second thing I would mention is my other camera, which is a GoPro. And I get a lot of fun out of that, taking it out surfing. I've experimented with Photoshop and creating those videos, and I've had some decent results. But I really like the GoPro Studio software that comes with it. It works on a, what would you call it? How does Lightroom work?
Non-destructive?
No, it's just it's not like Photoshop work on something. It's within the program. This is
database driven.
Yeah.
Had a total mind fart there. So it's database, which I didn't realize at first because my first one I created it on my laptop, and it wasn't powerful enough to render the video. And then I realized when I tried to put it all onto my tower, and that wasn't working either because it couldn't reference it. So I had to recreate the whole thing. But luckily for me, I took great notes, and it only took me about 40 minutes to rebuild. But what's really cool about it, after I've gone off on that tangent, is that you can get templates with it that come with licensed music, and they come with the edits preset in there with a different kind of video. Like I made one for surfing that was actually a dirt bike video. So you just figure out, here's a 2-second one, here's 4 seconds, here's 9 seconds. And you color your own video and just pop it in there, and boom, you have a great looking video.
What's the name of the product?
It's GoPro Studio.
Now, can I use any video with that?
Excuse me?
Can I use any video with that? It doesn't have to be GoPro.
I would assume you could use any QuickTime video, because when I download from the GoPro, it's a QuickTime video.
Excellent. Excellent.
But I don't with the GoPro.
So who do we have left here? Micah, is it you, buddy, or
let's do Cindy.
Well, wait, before you do that, I have to tell you guys all about Ed. Ed also designs the book covers for his wife's books, and they are phenomenal. In fact, my children just fell in love with her books just by the covers first, and I would like him to tell just a little bit about that, if he wouldn't mind just taking a second on that. Is that all right, Ed?
Sure. My wife writes books, I design the covers.
All right, thank you.
Too short?
Yes.
No, she writes middle grade mysteries. She's currently on her third. She's self-published too. We created our own company for that. And I've designed not only the covers, but I do they're roughly 250 pages each. So I do the layouts and InDesign. Occasionally there's some illustrations that I do in Illustrator. And then I also do the EPUB conversions, which was a learning experience, and that was terrific as well.
Yeah.
What's your wife's name?
Her name is, she goes by Carrie Cross.
And go ahead and tell what the title of the books are.
They're the Skylar Robbins mysteries. Skylar Robbins and the Mystery of Shadow Hills. And Skylar Robbins and the Mystery of the Hidden Jewels are the two that are available now, both in print and EPUB on Amazon.
Awesome.
It's really, I love book covers and stuff too. My family's really into books and the graphic arts that go behind it, and I've had the chance of designing a book cover as well. And to me, I don't think my design on a book cover came anywhere near Ed's, but it really takes a special eye to wow someone. And I know when I go to buy a book, I look for the right cover, and if it looks cool, then I'll buy it. If it doesn't, I'll be like, I do.
That's how I buy wine.
And you know what? I have to say, their family is really talented. My kids were so in love with Carolyn's books, and I was impressed by Ed's talent in designing those books. So I really have to mention that. So
I'll pass it along to Carolyn as well.
Yeah, my kids love you guys.
Yeah.
So, when we're talking about things that we really like, lately my thing has been, I've been really bogged down with a lot of work, and it comes back to my family. I have 5 small children, and we love art. My husband is an artist. He's of the Gichen tribe, and he does artwork as well, but he designs his in AutoCAD and then brings it into or SolidWorks, and then brings it into Illustrator, and then makes his big EPS files. And so we're a family filled with lots of art, with my photography and such. And so our biggest thing lately is coming up with themed shoots. And so I've done one where it involves the kids' hands, and so it's the Protecting Hands series. That was inspired by a challenge in a group. And then we have another theme that we're doing on angels, and that's going to be released soon. And we have a few other exciting themes. So that's been my big thing, and it's about storytelling, and it's kind of my relaxing, not having to worry about all the work that I have on my plate. But you know, in that, I'm finding that I'm falling in love with a lot of new and different artists, you know, budding artists as well, because they help inspire by what they do. You know, Morgana Creeley, if you guys, she's on pixeLobby. She's a storytelling person. Her art has its own story, and so the storytelling perspective of the art has been my thing lately. You know, being able to tell a story in a way, and that's taken me from just shooting and editing photos to becoming more creative. I've moved into the digital art side of things as well. I love Jesus's channel, the Photoshop training channel. It's been great. I'll go there for tips and ideas all the time, and that's what brought me to Jesus. And I said, "Hey, Jesus, what do you think about this?" And I've bugged him ever since. And in fact, if you don't mind, Jesus, will you just stop and tell us a little bit more about your Photoshop training channel?
Yeah, there's not much to say really. It's just as you mentioned, I have daily Photoshop tips. You can get them through the website or through the various social media sites, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, all of them. I post them everywhere, and I try to do a video. Or my original idea was to do a video once a week, but then I realized that was just not possible, just because, as I mentioned earlier, I like to research whatever I do.
Right.
So I never wanted to do like, this is how you use the brush tool, you know, like that's not what my YouTube channel is about. It's mostly they're either complete projects, so like I've done things like you know, how to design a movie poster from start to finish, or like I did the Captain America movie poster, which was done 100% in Photoshop without any pictures, or using the various tools found in the application. But anyway. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that you can find there.
And Jesus's, we have a channel just for Jesus on the site as well. So you can go to pixeLobby.com and you can look up Jesus Ramirez. It has the links to all of his stuff and his product. He has a new product he has out there, correct?
Yes, I do. It's a beginner's Photoshop for beginners. It's called Photoshop Fundamentals, and it's 7.5 hours or so of just Photoshop training designed for beginners. So I really slow down and talk about the basics and essentially the core skills to master Photoshop.
Yeah, so I recommend everybody go do that. The other thing I really noticed is in the photography, you know, there's certain things that will help a photographer or an artist set themselves apart, and I've really wanted to set myself apart in a different way. And to me, for those of you that know CJ Wilkes Photography, I have a lot to do with water. That alone and my natural shoots involving water sets me apart, as that's my thing. But
and she's not afraid to get into her work.
No, it's not uncommon, and you know, it's funny. I think a lot of people are shocked. I'm not one of the people that goes and buys designer shoes. I'm really happy with my flip-flops, and it's because I have to walk through the water, and if I have shoes, I don't care if they're the fanciest shoes or not. I'm going to end up in the water. So, and people are quite shocked when I do that.
And now you have a wetsuit.
Yes, I do have a wetsuit, but I'm so embarrassed putting it on because I squeeze into it, and my kids think it's the funniest thing, and I put it on backwards.
So, zipper in front or back? Yeah. Well, surfers, the zipper's in back.
No, that's the thing, is I totally put it on backwards, and I took a picture for the world to see, and it was quite the fun little show. But you know what was really fun was Micah. I was noticing he was talking about how he does fence posts in a lot of his work, and I was out shooting with my kids one day, and I saw a beautiful spot, and it had a fence, and I said I have to do a fence post because it just reminded me of Micah. So I'll be editing that soon just for Micah. But I think being a photographer, you want to set yourself apart in some way or the other, whether it's in what you shoot or how you shoot or even how you edit. And so we'll turn it over to Micah and let him go.
Yeah.
Tell us about you, Micah.
Well,
did Micah, did we get pics from you?
not yet.
That's what I thought. And here's Micah.
Well, I just wanted to, back up what Cindy said and everybody else. There's this wonderful website out there that's got nearly 25 artists on it who will be blogging soon and who will be adding more material as the days go by, including, information on gear and reviews about gear. We're going to have podcasts, and there's going to be, blogs about Lightroom, Illustrator even. Printing and saving images for the web and all that sort of stuff on this wonderful website called pixeLobby.com. And so, my pick of the week, number one, is pixeLobby.com, of course.
Good job. Good job.
Plug that. Got to get that plug in there. Shameless plug. But to follow up on that, there's a couple of other things. One of the websites I find, or one of the trainers and individuals I found to be very influential in how I approach Lightroom is Julianne Cost, and I think most of us know Julianne and have seen her and have watched her videos. She's a fairly low-key instructor, but she's fantastic at putting information together. I got to see her discuss her own personal work at the ADAM conference in 2015 in this past April in Monterey, and it was fantastic to see her work. She never really considered herself a photographer or considered herself an artist, and then she began to take photos of what seemed like everyday things. They're just fantastic artwork that really is mind-blowing. That said, her videos and her training on Lightroom and Photoshop is second to none. My other pick of the week, since everybody had at least one, my other pick of the week is going to be the Arcanum. The Arcanum is Trey Ratcliffe's new project, and if you don't know Trey Ratcliffe, he's probably the foremost HDR proliferator in the universe, and but his work is fantastic, and the Arcanum basically is a mentorship for photographers and designers to come alongside a mentor and a group of people under that mentor, and through critique and projects increase their techniques and their ability. And I've been with it for about 2 years. I'm still really low because I'm really taking my time, but it's a fantastic program, and that's at thearcanum.com. And so, other than that, I think you've got it. I'll put the links in the blog post too. So
excellent.
And I keep interrupting, so I apologize, but I wanted to go through pixeLobby, just a little bit more, if you guys are okay with that. pixeLobby has not just the channels for the artists. We have a section for some amazing artists, and it's continually growing. We're bringing more. We're also transferring the site to our new template that we just came up with, and it's turning out really beautiful. So I'm really excited. I'm thankful to Micah for doing this. He is an amazing help to me. And then everybody, but we've got more than just the artist section. We also have a spotlight section where each Saturday we spotlight a new artist, whether it's an artist, digital artist, graphic artist, and it's just a different artist each Saturday. So there's always going to be a new artist to feature, and we ask them a few questions, what they use, and then we also have a Pixelist Thursday, which is one of my personal favorites because it does hit, it shows a little respect to those before us and the programs that were used before us, and Ed is over that, and he is doing an amazing job. he was kind of forced to that because of me. He came up with a
Me and my
suggestion,
big mouth.
and he came up with a suggestion, and I said, okay, do it.
Get on.
And then we have this radio blog, which we're really excited to be doing. What else do we have? We have some gear section where we talk about gear. We have a Monday blog where we're bringing new blogs to you, because sometimes it's hard going on the internet and finding a great blog that you would be interested in. So we're going to introduce a new blog each week, and we have Stacy Hamilton over that. We have Paige Cooper over our Wednesday beginner boost, and so she brings a little tutorial or information to everybody each Wednesday. Let's see, what else? Did I miss something? I know I missed something. Oh, Tuesday we have a training tutorial that's usually put up, and that is to help with a little bit more advanced tutorials as well. And so we're slowly building this group up. If you have suggestions at any time, you're more than welcome to come to our Facebook group, pixeLobby Facebook group, and give suggestions. Or if you want to give a suggestion on a tutorial you would like to hear about and say, hey, Jesus, do you cover this? And he will say yes, and he'll bring it to you too. He'll say yes if he does it. Anyway, so it's a great site. There are so many amazing, fantastic artists, and I'm in awe and really have a lot of great gratitude to each person that's been wanting to be a part of this great group. So
Awesome.
I'll turn it over to you guys.
You go, Mama Bear. Right. Yes, Cindy is our fearless leader here as part of the group. Well, you know what? I think that kind of brings us to the end of the show. I think I don't have the exact time on it, but we've probably gone about an hour or so here. I think it was an excellent first show. I mean, I've done first shows before, and this has gone really well. It's fun, it's engaging, it's a conversation, and it's our hope that people will listen to this podcast and they feel like they're right there with us, sitting and listening in to this. Unfortunately, they just don't have the mic to be able to contribute. But that is our hope, and this is episode number, I'm calling it 001, because that means we committed to doing at least 100 shows, right?
Folks can contribute on our Facebook page.
This is true, absolutely. If you have any questions, we haven't quite established that yet. I apologize for that. But if you have any questions or comments or that, we can send them to Cindy. You have an email we should use for that?
Well, wherever they're watching this video, they'll probably be able to comment below, right? Whether it's YouTube, Facebook, website.
Yeah.
Video will be available on at Google+, and we may post it on Facebook depending on how everybody feels about that. But if you want to leave a comment, it's probably best to head to the Facebook page.
Yes,
Excellent.
and I do have an email address, but at the moment, you know, I am swamped with so much that I find that being able to keep track of everybody and help answer the correct questions, all of us meet at pixeLobby, so you at least have we have, what do we have, around 20 admins that are there that can answer your questions if I'm not there or any of these guys you see here on this panel. And then another thing to mention is we will be having guests in the future
Absolutely.
that are not here, so it's not just us you're going to hear from. So it's worth it to go to pixeLobby at Facebook or at Google+, and there will be someone to answer your questions there too.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, Cindy. Well, once again, thank you so much, gang. That was a great show. Appreciate it. Kudos to you. First show done. Thank you very much.
You guys all won.
All right. And with that, we're going to be leaving you. Thank you so much for listening, tuning in, and eventually subscribing to the show through iTunes. We appreciate that very much. And you know what? Just take the time, get out there, and create.